In 2004, a woman was walking northbound near the intersection of Highway 5 and Highway 121 in Melissa, Texas, when she was struck and killed by a motor vehicle. The police were contacted and they confiscated the woman's body, but oddly enough, they had trouble identifying her. Dental records are a very common and efficient method of identification, and the woman had a distinctive array of teeth. She was missing her upper teeth and one bottom tooth. There was no evidence of denture usage. She also had fingerprints that the authorities promptly collected. Despite these details, the woman's name remained unknown. Following their collection of the woman's fingerprints, the authorities compared their findings to people who had been arrested and booked in 7 nearby states. The results were nothing less than confusing and cryptic. The woman had been arrested 23 total times over the course of 27 years, and she provided a different alias for each arrest. 2 of these aliases, which seem to be the only 2 that are currently known to the public, are Rebecca Hilda Ackerman and Diane Torella Jones. The date of birth she provided for both of these aliases was March 25, 1959. Her latest arrest had occurred just 5 months before her death. Due to the wide variety of aliases, the authorities could not use the woman's arrest records to identify her. The FBI released a poster in an attempt to regain the woman's real name, but to no avail. The poster mentioned that the driver of the vehicle who had struck and killed the woman had not been charged with anything. This most likely means that it was an accident and the woman had no close friends or family to seek justice following the tragedy. At the time she was found, Jane Doe was carrying several plastic grocery bags that were filled with clothing and snack foods, which led the authorities to believe she had been homeless. The fact that she had been walking along a highway was also a telltale sign. In 2014, the Doe Network announced that Jane Doe had finally been identified, but they quickly retracted their statement after they realized they had made a mistake. To this day, the identity of the Melissa Jane Doe remains a mystery, and an intriguing one at that. I could not find any information about the crimes she had committed to earn her 23 arrests, but the sheer number of them suggests that she lived an extremely difficult life that caused her to use drastic measures to survive. It seems very likely that Jane Doe's story will never see the light of day, but with some luck, that will eventually change. Click the join button to become a member today. Channel members receive exclusive content as well as early access to all my content. This next case is fairly similar to the first, although it is much more recent. On April 15th of 2023, a woman whose name may have been Aleece was struck by multiple vehicles on Interstate 85 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Aleece had brown eyes and dark brown hair that was going gray. She was most likely white and Hispanic. She had been wearing a black and gray fleece jacket with a black t-shirt, a nude bra, black bottoms, and light-up shoes. All of this to say her outfit was very distinctive. She also had several distinctive tattoos. The name Emily with the date October 19, 2003, and an image of a pair of wings with a crown. The name Tiffany with the date November 14, 1998, and a picture of a foot. The name Noah with no accompanying date or picture. The acronym DIRG, or possibly DIRY, whose meaning is unknown. And finally, a star and ellipsis on her ear. Despite all of these unique tattoos and her interesting choice of clothing, Aleece's identity has never been discovered. The authorities determined that she was between the ages of 40 and 65. The name she had written on her body could have belonged to her children or grandchildren, or possibly even other family members. Given the images next to the first 2 names, they were clearly very important to Aleece, and she had created symbols for them. Noah was clearly important enough to warrant a tattoo, but for some reason he didn't have the same information or symbolism beside his name. It's possible that he wasn't quite as close to Aleece as the other 2. Although it seems likely that the dates next to the names are dates of birth, it's also possible that October 19th of 2003 could have been Emily's date of death. After all, the image next to her name was a wing and crown, which is sometimes used to symbolize death and the afterlife. However, none of these theories have ever been confirmed. To this day, the identity of Aleece and the people she had tattooed on her body remain unknown. All we can do is speculate about her circumstances and try to keep whatever shred of her memory we can alive. On August 14th of 1999, at around 12:30 p.m., a maid at the Colonial Motor Inn in Reno, Nevada found the body of a man lying supine in his room's bathtub. His head was resting on a pillow, and there were 2 solutions running from an IV into the veins in the man's right arm. His suicide note was dated August 11th of 1999. John Doe had registered his room under the alias Carlos F Otero. Although the suicide note is not available for the public to read, we do know that it was addressed to the man's family. However, he never mentioned any specific names in the note, and there was no information indicating his identity. John Doe had also used an address from the Bronx in New York City when registering his room, but the address did not actually belong to him. The manner of suicide in this case is particularly interesting. Very few people kill themselves with an IV, and the fact that he was able to administer the IV by himself suggests that he most likely had a medical background, or at the very least some medical training. According to some internet sleuths, one of the substances John Doe used in the IV was thiopental, which is a depressant that can induce sedation and even comas if taken in high enough quantities. This drug is used in human medicine, but is supposedly more common and easier to access in veterinary clinics. Thus, some people believe John Doe was actually a vet, although he could have also been an anesthesiologist. One theory that has been posited online is that John Doe was about to get sued for something related to his profession, such as malpractice or criminal negligence. Rather than watch his career go down the toilet, he committed suicide instead. This theory has never been substantiated, and the case of Carlos F. Otero remains an intriguing, if creepy, unsolved mystery to this very day. Robert Pickton was born on October 24th of 1949 to a family of pig farmers in British Columbia. Robert's family was harsh and extremely demanding. Robert and his brothers were forced to work on the farm from a young age, with their mother caring more about the pigs than her own children. They worked long hours and had terrible hygiene. Their mother would often send them to school with filthy clothes that stank of manure. Nevertheless, Robert developed a very strong attachment to his mother, possibly as a side effect of the abuse his father inflicted on the family. Throughout his time in school, Robert struggled and was unable to keep up with the other students. He was placed in a special class for students who had failed second grade. At 12 years old, Robert started raising a calf as his personal pet, which he loved dearly. Only 2 weeks after he started raising the calf, he found it slaughtered in the family barn. In 1963, Robert dropped out of school and got a job as a butcher. He worked this position for 7 years before leaving to work full-time at the family farm. Between 1978 and 1979, both of Robert's parents died, and he and his siblings inherited the farm. It was around this time that a farm worker named Bill Hiscox noticed Robert's strange behavior. He stated that Robert was a pretty quiet guy, hard to strike up a conversation with. On March 23rd of 1997, Robert Pickton was arrested and charged with attempted murder after he stabbed a sex worker several times following an altercation. The sex worker stated that Robert had handcuffed her, but she had escaped after sustaining multiple lacerations. She then managed to disarm Robert and stab him with his own blade. Robert was released on $2,000 bond, and the charge was stayed on January 27th of 1998 due to the sex worker's drug addiction. The prosecutors believed she was too unstable to testify in court effectively enough to secure a conviction. He was also sued 3 times for traffic violations between 1988 and 1991. Robert was certainly not the only member of his family to go down the wrong path. His younger brother David was convicted of sexual assault in 1992 after he attacked a woman in his trailer. Eventually, the Picton brothers were sued by government officials for violating zoning ordinances. They had neglected their farm and even altered the property in order to hold parties. They had also registered a non-profit charity with the government that was meant to organize and coordinate special events for other organizations. However, the special events that took place on the Picton property mainly consisted of raves featuring sex workers. Members of the Hells Angels were known to frequent these parties. Despite the mounting legal pressure they faced, the Picton brothers threw a 1998 New Year's Eve party, which resulted in an injunction that banned future parties. The non-profit status for their charity was also removed the next year. On February 6th of 2002, the police executed a search warrant for illegal firearms on the Picton property. Both brothers were arrested, and the authorities used what they had seen during their search to obtain a second warrant. This second warrant was part of the British Columbia missing women investigation. The police had noticed a number of personal items that belonged to missing women on the farm. The property was sealed off, and Robert was placed under police surveillance. On February 22nd of 2002, Robert Picton was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Serena Abotsway and Mona Wilson. 3 more murder charges were added on April 2nd for the deaths of Jacqueline McDonnell, Diane Rock, and Heather Bottomley. On April 9th, a 6th charge was tacked on for the death of Andrea Josbury. This was quickly followed by a 7th charge for the murder of Brenda Wolfe. 4 more charges were added on September 20th for the deaths of Georgina Papin, Patricia Johnson, Helen Hallmark, and Jennifer Firminger. On October 3rd, the 4 murders of Heather Chinnock, Tanya Hollick, Sherry Irving, and Inga Hall were added to the list. Finally, on May 26th of 2005, the authorities added the mother lode to the charges against Robert Picton with 12 more murders. Kara Ellis, Andrea Borhaven, Deborah Lynn Jones, Marnie Frey, Tiffany Drew, Carrie Koski, Sarah DeVries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Hardeen, Wendy Crawford, Diana Melnick, and an unidentified Jane Doe. In total, Robert Picton had been accused of murdering 27 women. He pled not guilty on all charges, and the trial became an absolute mess. One of the charges was dropped due to a lack of evidence, and the remaining 26 charges were split into 2 separate groups, one containing 6 charges and the other containing 20. On December 9th of 2007, the jury found Robert not guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder, but guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. On December 11th of 2007, Judge Justice James Williams sentenced Robert Picton to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. He stated that Mr. Picton's conduct was murderous and repeatedly so. I cannot know the details, but I know this. What happened to them was senseless and despicable. On May 19th of this year, 2024, Robert was attacked by a fellow prisoner named Martin Charest. Charest stabbed Picton in the head with a shiv, which resulted in Picton getting airlifted to a hospital. He died from his injuries on May 31st. As I briefly mentioned before, there was only one unidentified victim of Robert Picton. The Mission Jane Doe's skull was found with her vertebrae still attached, but her jawbone was never located. Several other bones belonging to Jane Doe were also found on the Picton farm. She has never been identified, and no family or friends have ever come forward. To this day, this poor woman's name and story both remain in the shadows, very likely to never see the light of day.